Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Blowout from 1981. So, I wanted to go on and check out this movie because I had also seen a movie called FX that was to have been in 1986. And looking at both of the films, I feel that they are quite similar. A guy kind of stuck in the middle of a conspiracy, and he really has to go on and figure out if by the end of this film if he's either going to end up being crazy or end up dead. So, because we have a guy named Jack within this film who is played by John Travolta, who is to be this sound effects guy, and he ends up going out in this wooden like area one night to just kind of capture some things, and he ends up capturing more than he wanted, which is to be a car accident which involves a political official known as a governor. Come to find out that governor in this car accident is to be not alone, and he ends up being with a girl named Sally. Come to find out, this Sally girl is to go on and do quite possibly a bunch of either blackmailing like schemes, or is to go on and try and go into acts with certain people to catch them with their pants down, literally. So we have Jack here that goes on and is to save this woman from this car accident. And here is where he realizes that he is very much the guy stuck in the middle of all this. Now wanting the truth to get out there, but every time he turns around, there is to be a problem with him getting the truth out, with him going on and finding out that there was an assassination attempt rather than just some car backfiring or blowing out its tire. And so Jack's seek for the truth leads him to desperately cling on to this girl named Sally, and them racing off to try to figure out some way to be able to take this tape that they had gone on and make with both sound and both images together, and go on and have this be publicized somewhere. And that leads them to trust the wrong person, which leads a person dead. And by the end of this film, it ends up getting this just, in all honesty, fairly just sad ending. But still, like, you can go on and like the adventure of how it all plays out at some points. So, I also really like this movie because it had altogether a really great cast. We have like John Lithgow, who plays the villainous character in this film, and really also knowing that the girl who plays Sally in this movie, and also John Travolta's Jack, had also been in the movie Carrie together, and seeing them kind of be put back into here in this movie, maybe going on to realize like how very much skilled these actors have become since me watching them in Carrie. Really having me understand now that like John really wasn't fit for that Carrie role, but it seemed that here he had gone on and possibly learned a thing or two, or really gone on to really earn this lead role, and it made me just be like, wow, okay, all right, like really, like, with the heavy amounts of dialogue that he's doing in this film, as well as also just like his performance overall, like you really buy it in this movie, whereas Carrie, like, you really could not buy him being put into that position, that character. You didn't buy that he was at all any kind of evil guy, but in this film you buy him a lot more. So, speaking of where you can go on and buy this character without going on to a Blu-ray or DVD or having to need to pay to see this movie somewhere, Conveniently, this blowout movie is available on Tubi, Tubi. It is a free movie and TV service that you can save. You can watch this movie for absolutely free. You can also go on, I think this is available on Pluto TV, which is another free app service. But then also, you can check out, without a doubt, certain other apps that I've kind of talked about through the time of which that I've gone on and done reviews. Like apps like Zeliphonic, Zelivonic, that can go on and have you watch drastically a huge amount of content for absolutely free. Movies, shows, any number of things your heart can content, you can go on and see within that one app. Without any real like exclusivity and whatever. No, like it's all on that app. Go ahead and check it out. You just kind of randomly search for a movie until you can't find it on there, because it seems that 9 out of 10 times the movie that you need is listed in there, except for if it's like a theater thing, then it might take some bit of time for that also. But anyways, after going on and saying that, what is the grading of this movie? Honestly, the dragging down of pace this movie is to really hurt this film, but I still would go on and say that this movie is like a lot of what I want in a movie. And so, like, in my own a biased opinion, like, I'm gonna say that this is at least a solid good, if not great film. Even though, yeah, it is very slow. But also there's a lot of dialogue in here where I'm again like seeing that like this is drastically different than any film out there. And then also it gives me a sound effects character that is to make me just kind of happy that like we have this kind of weird meta thing going on with like the movie inside the movie kind of thing. And that's the thing that I like in a lot of kind of content. Like we have kind of for the Fall Guy, which I guess in a lot of ways take out like a lot of that action in that film could be somewhat similar to this movie in some way or another. But so with that said, I think it's about that time again to go into full on spoilers about this bad boy. Because yeah, like really leading this up or teeing this up, I think that's much of all of which that I can go on and say about this movie. Because really, I think there is going to be a lot more I'm going to have to say about this film when we get into full-on spoilers and have me talk about every bit of what happens in this movie. In all honesty, this time around, when we go on to the full spoilers, I'm going to try as much as possible to condense down things. I'm going to try as much as possible to humanly condense down the dialogue as much as possible because there is also so much of it. And I'm going to have to tell you the Cliff Notes version of what kind of goes on instead of stating word for word what happens. I know a lot of people are probably getting annoyed with me probably at some point stating word for word stuff. There's sometimes where it's honestly just my thought process of reviewing things, and I'm not really thinking really about how I should actually have broken it down or whatever. I just thought oh, okay, this would be an interesting way to just kind of get me through this piece. But again, some people may not enjoy that kind of breakdown. So sorry. With that said, let's go on. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. I'm going to go on and, of course, pause this here. And I'm going to whip out my phone to get out my cast list or my notes or whatever I held upon my phone to be able to get me through whatever is to go into thoroughly breaking down this movie. So with that said, let's pause here and let's break it down. Nancy Allen ends up playing Sally in this movie. Did not really know her actor name because all I knew was her name was Sally because that's all I needed to think that I needed to remember here. But yeah, Love John Lithgow as Burke in this movie because, like, honestly, John Lithgow playing a lot of just villains. Like, he plays an amazing villain, hence him going on and spending a bulk of his career going on and playing a villain. And at some point, I probably will go on and review another movie where he goes on and plays a villain fairly soon here. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, for that eventually coming out. Because it will probably be fairly soon. Because I've already made the thumbnail, I've already gone on and done the background stuff. So, and of course, that movie will go on to be Raising Cain. Because I had already gone on and done stuff like Malignant and The Dark Side, and eventually I'll probably end up doing Secret Window, and so Raising Cain will probably be one of those films where I'll have to figure out how I can even go on and figure out a way to get people to watch that one. But anyways, let's go on and let's go into this. So the very beginning of this is to have a maniac, because his name, it seems, is just Maniac in this movie, who is going on and watching these people go in and out of this dormitory, it seems. And so we also are to go on and have this cop also go and kind of look into these windows. And these two girls are going on and dancing here, and they're kind of scantily clad. We have one girl who's very upset because she's trying to study, so she's yelling at the girls like, "Hey, turn the music down. I'm gonna go on and get Sue in here to force you guys to have the music go down." So this maniac starts going from window to window and starting to see that a couple is just banging it out. So the girl is like, "Hey, huh, somebody's in the window," and then she like jumps off the guy and is looking in the window, and the maniac seemingly vanishes into the actual dormitory. So the girl comes back, who had the problem with studying, and so she's grabbing the Sue girl to eventually go on and talk to the other ladies to tune the music down. So all while we have the maniac that is making his way through this dormitory, eventually looking at this one girl who is touching herself while next to nothing in clothing. She's kind of having a bra on. We then have the maniac that notices this shower, and of course, we always have to have in a horror film a traditional shower scene because that always is a staple in every horror film. So, as this maniac, goofily as he is to go on and appear upon this mirror, is to then turn to the girl who is wearing nothing within shower, of course, because why do I even have to logically have stated that? It is what it is. And so, as the girl is to go on and is to get stabbed here, she goes on and makes this horrible scream. And so we have Sam, who of course is to, I believe, be either the editor or director of this movie, and he is to be in the movie theater watching this film take place via the editing or whichever, and turns to Jack, who is John Travolta, who is the sound effects guy, and is like, "Man, that scream is terrible." And he ends up, and so Sam tells Jack, it's like, "What cat did you have to strangle to get that sound?" And Jack is like, "No, no, 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 that's all her." Like, it's like, "You didn't dub that?" And Jack is like, "No, I didn't dub that." So they go on and like, "Okay, like, run it again, but this time around I only want to hear just the scream." And so he's like, "No, no, no, you're right. Like, her scream is just garbage." So Sam goes on and tells Jack, it's like, "Well, in all honesty, like, I just hired the girl for her looks and not her screaming ability." So, uh, and then Jack goes, "Well, like, then who's gonna care then? Like, who cares how she sounds? Uh, like, she's just gonna look nice. So we have Sam who turns to Jack. It's like, you know what? How many years have we worked together? And clearly, I don't think he comes to the real rational answer. He just starts naming off all these movies like Blood Bath 2, Bad Day, and Blood Beach, and this and that. And then eventually they get to Co-Ed Frenzy. And so Jack is like, well, yeah, we have worked like uh, about 5 films in 2 years. And Jack turns to Sam. It's like, you know what? I think this is your finest work. So we have them turn to them, and so like they're making fun of one another. And so like Jack is like, well, hey, like you do this, I do the sound. Like you realize what our job is. You do the crap, I do the sound. Like so uh we have Sam who is irritated with Jack. It's like, well, hey, like, what about that wind in the background? Like, I don't like the wind. And so uh Jack is like, well, that's library stuff. Like I've kept that for years. And Sam is like, well, yeah, like, and I've heard it through a million times through a million of the movies. Like, you need something different. Give me new wind. And like give me something new. And he also goes on of like, yeah, and that scream, uh, you gotta dub that. Like you gotta give me a good scream. And so Jack is like, okay, I've gotten a few ideas, and he's like, okay, all right, like go at it. So Jack is going on, and he's getting a bunch of sound stuff together. He's going on and having certain little things that he can store away for library stuff. He's going on and uh, putting together like gunshots and this and that going on. All while there's a split screen also covering what is on the television on, which is I'm gonna cut to like the cliff notes of this whole thing because there's a lot of dialogue here that takes a long time, and so really the focus on this whole news bulletin thing is really just covering the governor and how he's eventually going to be at this ball, and it's all covering the Liberty Bell or the Liberty Day um, bonanza or whatever goofy holiday that they're talking about here. Uh, and so eventually the killer ends up going on and taking this Liberty Bell holiday and is going to tie into his murders and make it a serial killer thing and possibly have it to where it doesn't exactly tie to what has gone on with the governor. But so after we get through all of that, we then have Jack who uh, ends up making his way. No, wait. I just want to see if I'm kind of needing to cover anything else before I kind of transition here. But so we also come to find out that after the governor is to go to this ball, he ends up leaving with a girl, of course, who is to eventually be Sally, that he probably should not have. But yeah, so this governor is going on, and I think that there is a possibly re-election or something going on there, and so like, um, we eventually come to find out that they're trying to go on and get this guy kind of out of the race. So they thought that they can go on and figure out a way to have made him with this hooker like woman and that could get him out of the race, but he ends up dying in this whole car accident, which definitely like kind of takes him out of the race anyways. But they were just kind of hoping that that wouldn't have led to his death. But I guess he died. So, anyways, Jack leaves here from his special effects studio and makes his way out to this wooded area, this almost park like area, it seems. And so he's going on and taking this microphone like thing, and he's going on and kind of looking for certain sounds that he can kind of keep as either a library or go on and help him uh, use for the film that he was working on with Sam. So Jack goes on and he records the wind. He all of a sudden is to hear this weird kind of clicking back and forth sound, which we'll come to find is going to be the exact same sound that the killer Burke's watch makes when he goes on and he takes the wire from his watch and keeps pulling it back and forth. And it's like, oh, that was the sound, but we never really saw the Burke guy. But it seems that Jack could go on and kind of pinpoint where that sound is coming from. But so Jack is to also kind of hear the frogs, hear the owls, and all of a sudden hear this two couple that are possibly going to maybe try to get romantic between the two of them. And because Jack in his microphone kind of catches all these sounds, he's hearing their entire conversation and he's kind of laughing kind of quietly uh, while hearing about this two couple. And so the girl is asking, it's like, well, who's that guy over there? Like, is he a peeping Tom? And like, why is he watching us? Why is he over there? This and that. And the guy's like, I don't know. So they create some distance between them. So because a lot of these sounds that I'm going on and talking about, the frog, the owl, the couple talking, every bit of this will get replayed again, and Jack will really trying to narrow down the whole car accident bit by bit and figure out that the blowout of the tire didn't come from just some accident. There was more going on. And there was a lot of just conspiracy covering it up. So Jack is going on after the couple is to leave. He's still on this bridge, and so he ends up coming to find, as he's still recording every sound, this car going on and making this crazy, like wild and curved all over the place drive, bashing into this sign and then careening off this bridge and falling into this water. And so Jack is like, Jesus Christ. So he goes on, jumps into the water, and makes his way to this car, finding that Sally is still alive, banging on this window, hoping that someone is going to help her. So Jack is to go on and look and try to figure out a way of him getting into this car, and none of the doors open. But then eventually, when he finds one of the doors, he also finds a floating body of a dead person who ends up being the governor. Jack, of course, scared about this, is to really jump back into a part of water where he can catch a breath and then go back down. And so Jack now needs to go on and figure out like what he can do to try to get this woman out of this car, because as he used to go into the surface and look for if there's kind of a tree or something he can grab, instead he goes back down there and realizes that there's rocks that he can grab, breaking the window and having the ability to then get this woman out of the car and drag her to safety. So we transition to the emergency room, and so Jack is going on and talking to this detective and and telling his story about what had happened, and consistently having to go on and reiterate what happened over and over and over again to not only this detective, but then eventually this guy named Henry, who is connected to the governor. And Henry going on and saying like, "Oh, like pretend that you never saw this girl," and this and that. So the detective goes on and is asking Jack here. It's like, "Oh, you heard a bang," and Jack is like, "Yeah, some sort of a bang," and it's like, "Were you facing the car?" So like, yeah, just a lot of questions here. So Jack goes on and eventually states how he has specific sound equipment to catch seemingly every sound, and like it wasn't just a normal bang, like there was to really have been like this sound that Jack had caught. And so uh the more and more the two of them start to talk, we go on to just have Jack who gets more and more frustrated. Uh to where again, like the guy like Jack mentions like, yeah, there was a girl, and the detective's like, oh, there was a girl involved, and it's like, yes, I just said that. So and like he goes on and says, yeah, I jumped in the water, and it's like, oh, you jumped in the water, like, yeah, of course I wasn't bobbing for apples. Like I was there looking for the girl. So uh at the end of all this, he's like, you know what? Like, if this is known as obtaining an objective eyewitness testament, like you better just forget all this. Like, god dang, like he is to go on and seemingly reiterate everything that he is to go on and state here, and like logically like go on and see like, yeah, I saw this girl, I saved her, it seems that she was alive, I took her out of the water because it's the right thing to do. And so yeah, so after Jack goes on and is just kind of so irritated and done talking to the detective, walking away, he then goes on and tries to make his way to Sally just to talk to her to make sure that she's okay. And so the doc, or so Jack turns to this doctor and is just asking this doctor about how well she's doing. I'm like, how is it that this doctor is just so easily giving this guy this information? Shouldn't it be under patient uh doctor confidentiality? But I guess it's like, oh well, like this is just some guy that just arrived with her, so I guess I should just tell him everything. I don't know. But so he ends up stating like she's very lucky, mild shock, some cuts and bruises, no major injuries. So he's like, well, hey, can I see her? And she's like, well, he's like, well, she's sleeping, uh, and she's sedated, and so Jack is like, well, hey, I'll just say goodbye then, and I'll just kind of see her later. And he's like, well, yeah. The doctor's like, yeah, don't stay too long. So as Jack meets up with Sally, she's talking bizarrely about her purse, and she's trying to get out of there. And Jack is like, well, hey, you don't even have clothes. Like, why are you going on and like trying to leave? And Sally's like, well, hey, you know who I like you know who I was with, right? And or no, wait, where is the? Well, I think Jack talks to Henry like kind of after the fact here. Yeah, yeah, he speaks to Henry after the fact. So my bad. So, uh, but so the two of them are talking, and so like Jack introduces himself to Sally and just wants to just kind of um get any information that he can about what happened. So, uh, so oh my god, can I just go on? Let me pause here for a second. But the main, I'm back now. So the main thing here is they're introducing one another, and so Jack is trying to go on and ask Sally at school, hey, like, how about you and me? Like, how about we have a drink together? Like, how about I go on and just like talk to you? And like, it's not like he's trying to go on and uh, like, uh, like get her to sleep with him or anything. Like, he like ended up saving her life, and so he like just kind of wants to get to know this girl, and like he feels like obligated to like know what her story is, because like it seems that when specifically Jack is to be like thrusted into speaking with Henry, and how Henry is going on and saying like, well, hey, like that girl that you saw, pretend that she isn't there. And immediately probably in uh Jack's mind, it's like, well, I can't just do that. I can't just pretend that she's not there. Like, I just saved her life. Like, were you to just force me to pretend that everything that I was to either try to do or I actually did do, like, didn't matter? Like, no, like, I can't just brush that off that easily. And that's what it seems that Henry was wanting him to do. So that makes then Jack wanting to even get to know Sally more, because he's just more intrigued and invested by this girl, to figure out how this is all kind of connected to to him saving her and what all like happened. So, and how it seems a lot of stuff is just kind of to be like brushed under the rug, or to really also, even by the end of this film, like state that the murderer ends up to not be determined in this movie by the news people. And so, like, that is just like, man, they are trying to just cover everything up in this film. But so, uh, so yeah, so Jack goes on and tries to get Sally her clothes, and and eventually just try to get her to just kind of like, hey, you stay here so I can talk to you some more and take care of you. And at some point, like, he takes her in his car and brings her to a motel, and then just kind of further is to try to understand what had gone on, but then also to try and understand Sally of her connection to this accident that really isn't an accident. So we have this detective that turns to who had we have this detective who turns to Henry and is to mention about Jack, who had brought the girl in. And so Henry goes on to be like, okay, like, I want to talk to you and to the girl too. Where is she? And so Jack is like, well, she's over there, but she's sleeping. And it's like, oh, you want to talk to me? Make it quick, because I'm getting out of here. I'm going home. So Henry goes on and takes Jack and puts him into a private area. And so they go on and they start to talk. So, uh, but Henry is also to be asking for like a a secret room, and him wanting to see men checked out here. And so that's where finally Jack just turns to this officer, is like, okay, like, what is the big deal here? What's going on? And so the guy is like, well, hey, like, the guy that they brought in? It's like, oh yeah, he's dead. It's like, what's the big deal? And it's like, oh, he's the guy, McRyan. He's Governor McRyan. It's like, oh, okay. So he was supposed to be built up as the possible next president. For some reason, he was just kind of knocked out of the race. Uh, and the cop goes, yeah, he would have had my vote. So Henry goes on, takes Jack into the room here, and so he starts talking about him. So he's like, okay, remember, the girl that you pulled out of the car? Yes. Well, I would like you to forget about her. Forget you ever saw her. And Jack is like, wait, what? And so Jack is like, who are you? Like, why are you talking to me like this? And he ends up stating that his name is Lawrence Henry. I work for the Governor McRyan. So we have Henry cliff noting here is to really state here how, like, none of what happened with the governor and Sally should really be out in the public, because think of this man's family. Like, think of his wife. Like, I also am to be his friend, this and that. And so Jack is just like, well, like, I could understand that, but, like, I also really just have a story to tell. And so, and he's also gone on to already tell the police, like, his report. And Henry's like, oh, well, I've taken care of all that. And so we have Jack who's like, well, hey, what about the girl? And Henry's like, well, I'll take care of that. She'll cooperate. And so, like, because, like, this guy is forcing Jack to be silent here, that's even having Jack even more just be like, no, like, you're not going to just force me to just be quiet here. And, like, I'm going to try to figure out some way to get this story out. Like, I don't care how many people probably have to die to really just have me state this, what had happened, it seems. Uh, but yeah, like, but then also it makes Jack, by the end of this tale, even realize, like, yeah, like, all of that blood is probably on his hands too. And he just wanted to do the right thing. And he thought that telling the story was the right thing. And maybe it wasn't. To the point of him driving him crazy by the end of this is like, man, what if I would not have gone on and done what I did? What if I would have just let this go? Would so many people have died because of this? So, and then also we have, like, Henry's like, can't you just keep your mouth shut? It's better the governor died alone. And so Jack is like, I don't know if I could do that. I was there. She was there. And, you want to tell his wife that he died and he had some hand in a girl's dress? Yeah. So yeah. So pushing forward here, uh, Jack ends up telling Henry here, and he finally tells him, like, well, hey, like, me and the girl, we're gonna slip out the back. We're just gonna vanish. You're never probably gonna see us again. So the two of them are in the car, and so the girl is like, well, hey, how about your place? And Jack turns to Sally. It's like, you really don't want to go home, do you? And so Sally turns to Jack. It's like, well, you know who was in the car, right? He was a political official. And so, like, do you think that I can really just kind of go home? Do you really think the smart strategy would just be going home? No. Like, somebody's going to go on and find her and probably kill her. So, if anything, she wants to go on and go to a motel or a hotel because also she remembers that she had lost her purse, and that purse has her name and address. And so some reporter is going to go on and find that purse within that wreckage and turn around and try to find Sally and try to get this story. So logically, uh, it's like, okay, all right, so we'll just kind of go to a motel. Uh, and so Jack is like, man, like, first is a drink, then it's my place, now it's a motel. Like, man, Sally, you're really moving quicker than a lot of the other dates that I've ever had. So Jack is going on, and he's really needing to move Sally as almost as if she's basically a dead body, it seems. Because this girl is either just so, like, either on a sedative drug or really just, like, out of it because of all of what happened. And so Jack is having to push Sally against this wall so he can go on and open this door. He's having to literally like put the sheets and kind of wrap her into this bed. And so here's where Jack turns around, goes into his car for his equipment so he can replay the whole scene all over again, be hearing out the sounds. So he's going on and hearing the sounds of the wind as he's adjusting his pencil to just kind of reimagine what had all happened. And so he's going on and hearing the couple, and the couple is going on and saying like, well, yeah, peeping Tom, this and that. So we have Jack kind of fast tracking and adjusting, and so he's hearing the sound of the frog, and he's looking at his dulometer, whatever that is, to be the thing of the sound. And so Jack continues to uh, go through the scene, the set, the woods, and is to hear the owl, and he also is to have heard like the clicking sound of the watch, and he doesn't know what that sound is. He's like, what was that sound? So then cue the car. And so he goes on, and he's really listening to this whole car thing over and over and over, and he's just kind of hearing it as slow as possible. And then he ends up hearing that the car just doesn't go on and just has a tire blow out. There is a shot, and then the tire blows out. So Jack is like, oh my god, there is distinctively a shot being fired into the tire. And so this wasn't just some accident, it was either assassination or a possible murder of some kind, or manslaughter, or whichever. So we then come to find Burke. Burke is John Lithgow's character, and he's to be the evil man within this movie. So Burke makes his way out of his car, opens up his trunk, and is to start to get certain items via out of this vehicle, which of course is to be certain like tire iron, because he's going to go on and adjust the wheel to make it look like it's not being shot out of. And so Burke rolls the wheel out to just maybe see if anybody is to actually be there. Nobody's there. So Burke goes on and is to rip out the tire right after he figures out where the bullet holes were. And so the following morning, we have both Sally and both Jack both kind of like, oh, hey, yeah, good morning, stranger that I barely know. Still. So, and so Sally starts looking at Jack's equipment. It's like, oh, like, do you just listen to some music? Like, what is this? And Jack is like, oh no, that's my job. I do sound effects for movies. Oh, movies? Oh yeah. So, uh, and so Jack was like, well, yeah, like even in fact, like last night I was recording some sound, and that's how he kind of met this girl eventually by just kind of doing that whole thing. So, and he starts going into like, well, yeah, like like a door slamming, a bird chirping, the wind, this and that, all kinds of movie sounds. So we go on, and she's also asking us, well, hey, like big movies, and Gianna's like, well, no, the bad ones, unfortunately. So we start to then have Sally. It's like, well, hey, like regardless, like I really love movies, and so she's always ever wanted to do makeup for films, and if anything, she states about how she had gone on and seen a movie with Barbara Streisand, and if anything, they didn't do a good job like putting makeup on her. But Sally feels that she can go on and give uh, people like a better makeup like approach. Later on, she goes on and she states uh, how she goes on and at some points like, well, hey, there's some points where I have like the no makeup look, and then there's sometimes where I have the real makeup look, and those are only for special occasions and this and that. Uh, so there was a lot of just kind of funny things just kind of going on with Sally's character. So we then turn around and have Jack talking about like, okay, uh, like, well, hey, like last night I recorded the sounds, I recorded your accident, and I had the whole thing on tape. And except that I don't think that it's an accident. I think that the tire was shot out. And she was like, well, that's crazy. And Jack is like, no, it's not. Listen to this. So he goes on and he redoes the whole sound thing. And it's like, okay, like now listen again. Like, uh, and just kind of hear this out. You're gonna hear this loud bang, and then you're gonna go on. And you're gonna hear the car. And so Sally's like, well, yeah, like maybe that was a gunshot, and so if anything, like Sally doesn't really want to go on and rehear what had happened last night because it's kind of depressing, and and so then Jack is like, well, okay, like what were you doing with McRyan? And so Sally is like, well, hey, that's kind of a personal question. That's none of your business. And Jack is like, well, I don't need the nitty gritty details. Just kind of give me the uh like just give me just anything. So Sally's like, forget it. It's personal questions. And Sally's like, I don't even know who you are. I like to and so Jack is like, well, I'd like to get to know you. So so Jack's like, well, hey, what about that drink? And Sally's like, some other time, okay? And Jack is like, no, no, no. Like, I just saved your life. The least you can do is give me a drink. Like, come on. Like, so Sally goes on and she's like, "All right, like, well, like, I have a friend that's in the book, and she's Judy Demings, and like, if you want to go on and have that drink, you can look her up and you can call me." And so Jack is like, "All right, like I'm gonna hold you to that, like, honest." And she's like, "Yeah." And it's like, "Okay, like, I'll call you then." So Jack makes his way back to his special effects office, and we all of a sudden have a guy burst into Jack's office stating about how there's a guy uh, that has movie proof of McRyan getting killed. And so they start watching the news, and so we come to find a guy named Carp here who is to have like photographic evidence about what had happened. And so we have Carp state here that uh that McRyan was alone. He wasn't with somebody. Because we come to find that Carp is to try and cover up uh Sally's existence because he knows Sally. Because Carp is to go on and state that he was just out and about and he was just kind of testing this certain photography kind of camera thing at night. And unfortunately, he ended up also being involved in seeing the whole car accident. And he tries to just state that it was like, oh, I was just at the right place, right time kind of thing. But really, he was there as a plant because he knew what was going on, because he ended up getting a call from a guy named Burke, who is going on, and we later find, going to give him $6,000 in total for being involved in all of this. Supposedly 3 up front and 3 later, which the 3 later never came. So we go on and we have that all to be said here. And so now Jack is now having to leave. And also like he is to like be known. I believe this is Sam who is talking to him here, who goes on and states about auditions, and Jack just continues to leave anyways because supposedly Sam is going on and trying to audition a bunch of girls for that Scream, and Jack is to go on and kind of quickly look at each one of them and just be like, yeah, look for someone else. Like, none of these screams are going to work. None of them are good screamers. And eventually, when they go on and later find other girls that are trying to scream, none of them really sound good either. So, Jack goes on to try to grab this specific magazine so that way he can find the coverage of these photographs that had covered the whole accident. So he grabs this magazine and he makes his way back to the office so he can go on and start cutting these little clips to start to make this little photo book thing that he can see the accident play out. But then he turns around and further just be like, okay, like, I need this to turn around and become an actual film with all of these pictures so that way I can go on and like match my sound to it. And like, so this is a really very old fashioned way of filming, but it's also just kind of really interesting to just kind of see this approach done in this manner of just kind of taking these pictures and making a film out of them. But anyways, so we have Jack then turns this like film developer and is trying to get his specific film to get made so that way eventually he can turn around and make copies. And the guy's like, well, hey man, like, I'm stacked up here. And it's like, well, hey man, like come on, please, like just this one, like, as a favor to me. And so he's like, all right, okay. So he's like, hey, come back by midnight. So Jack then goes on and calls Sally, and he's like, well, hey, like, see, like, I told you I'd call you. And how about that drink? You promised. So we come to find out that Sally is trying to leave town because I guess that Henry guy had gone on to give her a bunch of money to Vamoose. So she is going on and she's at this this train station leaving. And so And so Sally's going on and telling Jack here, it's like, well, hey, I'll meet you at the station because I'm leaving for town. So Jack meets her at the station, and so Sally's consistently trying to tell Jack, it's like, well, hey, like, I gotta leave in at least 20 minutes, but I also need to, like, kind of find my seat ahead of time. And so I probably need maybe 10 minutes. So you and me, we can still have that drink, but, like, it's only gonna be 10 minutes. But the more and more that the two of them start to talk, the more Jack forces her to stay longer because he likes her, and also he wants to, like, either have him get to know her or vice versa, because eventually there's a huge amount of dialogue here that Jack goes into telling his story. So the two of them go into this this cafe slash bar, and it ends up saying like Schlitz or something on the windows. So I don't know exactly what this location actually is. But anyways, uh, they go to this bar, and in the background of the bar, there is this like just seemingly bare woman, just bearing it all. Like I was just like, oh my god, like why does this bar have this picture here? But then again, I'm just like, well, just I guess this is yet a movie that needs to continue to go on and show just some display of seemingly more clothless women for whatever goofy reason. So we have Sally and we have Jack talking here. And so Sally asks Jack here, it's like, well, hey, what is the first thing that you see when you meet somebody? And Jack is like, well, I'm a legs man. I love legs. And so Sally's like, come on. And so Jack is like, her face, her face. And so Sally's like, well, yeah, no kidding. And so here's where Sally goes on and she again like starts talking about makeup. And she again talks about how no face makeup or certain makeup for special occasions and this and that. So I've kind of covered all this already. So we then turn around and we also have Jack who's going on and talking about his past. And oh, also she ends up talking about the whole like, well, hey, if you got a broken nose or if you got this bruise or you got a black eye, like what would you do? And she ended up taking this brush and she ended up kind of putting it on to Jack's face and is showing how like with a certain amount of powder, like how you can go on and but she doesn't actually do it. She just takes this brush and he's like, wow, like you're really talented. And so and he also just tells her how impressed that that he really is about all of this. And she's like, well, you're not really interested in this whatsoever. And he's like, no, I really am. Like, I'm also like, he's involved in movie stuff. So really, like, one thing that he doesn't have to really have heard about is how makeup people do things. So more than likely, Jack is probably really fascinated by everything that she's talking about here. So, and also Sally's like, well, yeah, you're just like having me more and more talk, so that way I can miss my train. And he's like, well, no, that's not true. Like, I just didn't want you to go. So, and he's like, because I really like you, and I just met you, uh, and right now you're just kind of going off on me, and you're just being mad at me. So Sally's like, well, hey, I don't really know anything about you. Like, tell me anything. Like, and so we have Jack that turns around. And he's like, oh, okay, all right. Like, so, uh, she asks like, well, you're a sound man, right? And he's like, well, yeah. And so it's like, well, like, how'd you get that job? And he's like, well, good question. So he goes on and he's like, well, it all started out in school. Like, man, this seems like a very long, stretched out story. It's like, man, he could have just stated, like, well, yeah, it started in the womb. It started in the womb as I was with my ma. Like, I immediately in the womb was to just know that I was going to be this sound guy. But yeah, that's how long this story is. But so Jack goes on and he's like, well, like I used to fix radios, made my own stereos, and I would win all the science fairs, you know the type. So he went on to go and get enlisted in the army, and he refined his skills there. And then after the army, uh, and she's like, "Oh, were you in any wars?" And he was like, "No, no, no, no. Like I was a communications whiz. They never let me leave New Jersey." So uh, then he ended up, after being a part of the military, he went on to be a police officer for a while, and then after that he went into movies. And then she's like, "Wait, wait, wait! Like you were a police officer, you were a cop." And he was like, "Well, no, like if anything, I was more into like the communication aspect of a police officer." Because here's this whole entire story. So we come to find out that there is this guy named Freddy that that Jack had to go on and put this wire on this guy's body. And so come to find out, the guy Freddy who was wearing this wire, as both Jack and this other detective guy were kind of following him, they didn't realize that eventually like Freddy was going to get very nervous and sweat a lot during uh Freddy going on and having this wire on him. And so what ended up happening was that the wire ended up starting to like burn into the guy's body, into the guy's like stomach or whatever. And so at one point, Freddy was going on and talking to these mob bosses in this car, getting certain specific bits of information. And then all of a sudden, the wire on Jack's side started to just like, you could kind of hear bits and pieces of stuff, but it mostly went into static. Really realizing that like Freddy was having some trouble with his wire and it was malfunctioning. So we have Freddy needing to desperately stop at some bathroom because he needed to go to the bathroom. And coincidentally, Jack was going on and realizing, like, well, hey, there must be something going on with this guy's wire. Like, I need to go in there and help him out. And the cop was like, no, 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 like, you blow his cover. And Jack is like, well, no, like, I have to go in there. I have to help him. So Freddy, it seems, was to go on and have a visitor prior to Jack, and that was to have been one of the mobsters. And by the time that Jack goes into the bathroom to try and help Freddy, we come to find out that Freddy is getting hung in his bathroom stall and he's dead. So Jack, now to have realized that some mistake that he had gone on and made led to this guy's death, and so he walks away. So that's the end of that story. Trying to sum up it as much as I can, but yeah, that story just took forever. But regardless, hey, I said at least the cliff notes as much as I could about this story. And also, I'm really going on at this point and missing Burke. I miss the villainous character that goes on and murders people in this movie, because there's just a lot of dialogue going on here. But so, uh, Sally is like, well, hey, like, it wasn't your fault. And Jack is like, well, yeah, just tell that to Freddy. He's dead. So Sally's like, well, you know what? Like, something's bugging you. This whole thing with Henry, the governor's assistant, uh, and anyway, so like eventually they realize that like something's bugging Jack, but then also Sally is going to go on and get paid off by Henry to leave town here. So Jack is sitting here. It's like, well, hey, like, look, they're covering up a lot more than you just being with McRyan here. Like, I know that tire wasn't shot out, or uh, I know that that tire was shot out. And Sally's like, well, how can you be so sure? And did you see the news today? Yeah. I found a way to put my sound with the pictures, and when you see it, I'm sure you'll see it was a blowout. It was no blowout. Um, would you stick around for a couple of days and and I just think you could help me with this. So Sally's like, well, I don't know, like I'm in a lot of trouble already, and he's just like, uh, and she's like, well, if I stick around here, uh, if I can just clear myself of all this, and so Jack's like, well, hey, like if I just go on, if I just kind of like have you like listen to all this, and like, how about we just go and we leave together? We can disappear together. Why not? Um, like, why do you want to go on and just leave by yourself? We can just leave together because if anything, they're both connected to this anyways. So, I was like, well, I'm gonna have to think about it. So here's where we have Burke, who is having a photo with Sally, and he tracks down a girl that is making her way through this seemingly mall like location. So, as this girl starts to walk around, we have Burke who goes on and finds this ice pick by this fish market and by this bakery, and goes on and sees that this woman is making her way to this bus. And so Burke goes on and gets behind her and is to take his watch and is to take out this like piano wire, I'm assuming, because if anybody is to go on and to have played the video games of Hitman, you would know that like an elephant wire thing, or elephant wire, piano wire is to be like because elephant wire, that makes no sense. Piano wire is to be like the deadliest of wires, and you could easily kill like anybody, or also you can just kind of take their head clean off with a piano wire. And there's really, once you have a piano wire, there's nothing really that you can do to like escape that kind of attack, because you can even go on and have your kind of fingers in front of the piano wire and it'll chop off even your fingers. That's how devastating piano wire really is, wildly enough. So Burke grabs this woman, and so this leads them to tussle down this hill because they're in this kind of construction site. So as Burke is to go on and overpower this woman, he then is to realize that this woman does not match the same picture as, of course, the Sally woman. So he goes on to look at this sign with the whole Liberty Bell thing, and he's like, aha, like I'll just go on and make this just a string of murders, and I'll end up carving a bell onto this girl's chest. So after that is to happen, we then see the real Sally, who is making her way to eventually meet up with Carp. So Carp is, of course, at this hotel, and he is like ahead of time, just kind of planning a conversation that he's probably going to have with Sal, knowing that she's going to eventually come to him. So when Sally does make her way into this place, like, oh, hey, yeah, Sal, hey, come on in. So, uh, after the whole just kind of normal, like, day to day, like, hey, why haven't you cleaned this place? It looks dirty, blah, blah, blah. So, and we have Carp who's like, well, like, I haven't made it yet, so I don't have a maid. So, uh, So Sally's like, well, yeah, this isn't a social visit. And he's like, oh no? Uh, you almost got me killed last night. Uh, Dead, you understand? So he's like, oh, babe, like, I didn't have nothing to do with that. Well, that was an accident. And also Carp is to say that immediately after he saw that there was to have been someone who was going to save Sally here, that's when Carp just kind of took off. So because really, like, uh, he's like, well, yeah, like this guy did a way better job than I ever could have done because you know what, I can't even swim. So back then with Jack is going on and he is taking the sound and or no he's going on and taking the developed film and he's bringing it back and he's watching it back and he's like aha, and he's going on and looking at certain uh he's looking at certain pieces and he's kind of pointing it with his finger to be like aha, like this is where this came from, this and that. So uh we then turn around and have Jack, who is putting this thing that he recorded, he's putting it in a ceiling panel so he can hide it from whoever is to possibly go into his place and try to look for it. So it's a little secret area. Which interestingly enough, they had to like shoot from like a very far from like from the outside of this window, looking in, so it just kind of looked like a very weird camera shot here. But hey, you got the shot in. So Jack then turns around and he is to speak with this detective that he had spoken before. And so the more and more that they start talking, and the more that Jack is kind of hesitant about really giving this evidence over to this detective, the detective's like, well, hey, you better go on and you give me this evidence or I'm going to arrest you uh, for just kind of withholding evidence. But so but yeah, so Jack is like, this isn't an accident, and plain as simple, it was not an accident. So, uh, and so really, we're stating here that Jack was possibly a eyewitness to an assassination, and so uh, Jack is end up asking the detective here. It's like, well, hey, are you heading up the investigation? And the guy's like, yeah. Uh, like, did you check McRyan's tires? And And the guy's like, well, no, why should I? And it's like, well, it has a bullet hole in it. Like, he was killed. And the detective's like, well, says you. Like, anybody else says accident. And Jack is like, well, who? And I got a special commission former here that's got to say it was an accident, whatever that means. So, so back and forth. There's a lot of just back and forth here. Um, So let's fast track through a lot of this. So, uh, eventually it seems that both Jack and both the detective don't really like one another, but the detective is still going to go on and do his job, regardless of how disdained he is, probably from Jack. And he's like, well, hey, just give me the tape, and I'll send it over to the lab, and I'll have it checked out. Interestingly enough, the tape does get checked out and it's erased. Jack goes into all of his other equipment and finds out that all of his other stuff that has ever been recorded is all erased, conveniently enough. So, besides, of course, the eventually Jack now needing to scramble and now needing to turn to Sue, to get the original stuff that Carp has, so he can go on and like bring sound into it, so he can go on and kind of give the better perfect cut here. So, but also they talk about Carp here and how he's making a fortune going on and selling his pictures in magazines about that whole occurrence, and probably Jack is probably trying to figure out some way to get his whole slice of the pie as well. And but really that like this Carp guy technically has evidence, and but the detective can't go on and find like Carp because he has disappeared to this hotel, rightfully so. So let's really just fast forward through a lot of this. Really. So we then turn around. We have Burke, who is calling his contact, and so of course Burke is like, "Well, it's Burke, sir. What?" Uh, and so the guy is like, "Well, hey, what have you done?" And I don't understand the question, sir, because it seems that Burke is going really off the rails here. Uh, because it seems that he's kind of had to have adapted and gone and done way more than what this guy is even asking for. So he's going against the plan, and he's going on and killing and all this. Like he's making a real huge, like kind of like a serial killer thing. Like that is not just something that people are just going to go on and just brush away. Like if you go on and just make certain people disappear, like no one's gonna really look for that. But like this guy's going on and he's doing all these murders, and he's really going on and doing all this stuff. So uh, the guy on the other end of the phone is saying you're crazy. And so Burke is like, you were just or no wait. Uh, the guy on the other side of the phone is like, you're crazy. You were just supposed to get some pictures of him, and aren't you aware of and so Burke is like, well, aren't you aware of what you're saying, sir? Uh, and so the guy is like, well, hey, where are you? And he's like, well, I'm calling from a secure booth. I suggest you do the same. So eventually, at some point, he goes on and he calls this guy again, and he tells him like, well, yeah, like I'm gonna have to go on and I'm gonna have to do like a bunch of just serial murderers to not have this all be connected to this one girl, and because he realizes how they have to go on and they have to just knock this girl off. But anyways, Jack makes his way to this photos place. What is it called? Carp Photos. So he's going to his actual business. So when Jack makes his way there, he meets up with this police officer, and so Jack is to go on and state that he has business with Carp, and his officer is like, well, like, who are you? Like, are you anybody? And he's like, well, I'm one of his customers. Like, oh yeah, like I'm sure he has a lot of customers. Like, I can just go on and just like have you just come in just because you state who uh you are as a customer to him. Like, no, like that's not gonna work. So the cop is like, well, I'm sure you're just a reporter, aren't you? And Jack is like, no. And so he's like, well, yeah, you want one of Carp's films. And so uh, for how Jack is really kind of being secretive and lying to this officer, the officer's going on like, man, for every time that everybody's just lie to me today, like I wish that was like against the law, or I'd have a lot of people I could collar today. And he's to go on and then thrust into Jack's face the number of pictures that this guy had taken. And supposedly he'd offered like $1,000 of one of these photos. And so as we go on and have Jack look at photos, we come to find that Sally's had a career in going on and ruining marriages, and going on and having just all these kind of photos where she's wearing next to nothing. So uh again, we have Burke, who is still going on and talking to this guy and stating that they just wanted Ryan out of the picture, not killed. And Burke is like, well, I completely understand the objectives of the operation. And Burke is like, well, I didn't kill him. It was an accident. And it's like, your accident shot a tire of his car. And he's like, well, hey, as you may recall, this was a plan as proposed as your meeting on June 6th. We rejected that plan. Do you remember? I do admit I had exceeded the parameters of the authority, but I stayed with the acceptable margin of error. Uh, and also, like, Burke goes on and further states that, like, this guy, like, the main objective was just so that this guy would get eliminated from the election, and he achieved that goal. So the guy goes on and tells Burke, it's like, well, hey, like, you know what? Like, I don't know you. You don't know me. Like, we've never seen one another. Don't ever call me again. Uh, but Burke is like, no, 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 no. Like, hey, we still have loose ends. And so here's where he goes on and he states, like, well, I changed the tire and I'm going to have to go on and, uh, and find Carp, even though he's disappeared. And lastly, the girl. Like, I'm gonna have to go on and terminate her and make it look like one of the series of sex killings. So, and this would secure the operation. And the guy's like, "What operation?" So, back with Sally going on and desperately trying to get some girl to scream as best as she can, and they're like, "Okay, take 28, take 29." None of these girls could go on and scream good enough, and so Sam is just like, oh my god, like these girls suck. So he's trying to at some point tell them to stop, but then he's not into the microphone, so he has to kind of tell them to stop. So well, no, he's telling them to cut. My bad. But either way, it's the same thing. So he's adjusting the girls, telling one girl to grab her hair and the other scream. So Jack comes back and so Jack turns to Sam. It's like, well, hey, Sam, I'll be in my room. And he's like, well, hey, where have you been? And he's like, well, I had some business to take care of. And Sam is like, well, hey, I thought you were working for me. Like, what business do you have going on? So, and so he's like, well, hey, get busy. Like, we need the effects for this other reel. And so he's like, okay, I'll get them. So here's where he goes on and starts going through all of his tapes, and all of his tapes are all blank. And we have this girl coming in stating how Jack isn't answering his phone. It's the police. And we have Jack who turns to this girl, is like, hey, who's been here today? And is like, oh, some guy. what guy? I don't think I like your tone of voice. Uh, so we go on and we have the phone being answered. Uh, and so we have Jack going on and stating about how every single one of his tapes were all blank and there's nothing on them. And also relaying this to the detective, who is like, well, yeah, like the tape that I had is blank also. So so after that whole phone call, God, uh, we then have Jack who is calling Sally. So Jack says to Sally, it's like, hey, listen to me. I have to show you the film that I made. So just stay there. I'm coming right over. So, uh, as Jack is to try to leave, he ends up meeting this guy named Donahue who wants to go on and talk to him in a secret area to try and get that film. So that way he can go on and put it on the news so that way he can make some money off of Jack, basically, because it seems like from a little birdie that someone like stated that Jack has uh, has some information or something about this case that no one else does. So Donahue starts talking to Jack and convinces him to like, well, hey, like, how about you go on and like you go onto the news and you and Sally both go on and convince people like what is to have happened with Mick Ryan. And after all this talk, eventually, it seems that uh, Jack here is convinced by Donahue to do what he says. So that then turns around and then has uh, Jack and Sally watching the footage together. And so eventually they confirm um, that there was a shot before the tire blew out. And so Sally ends up asking Jack, like, well, hey, did you take this to the police yet? And he's like, well, yeah, I gave them a copy. And they sent it to a lab, and then it gets erased. And so, but luckily he had an extra copy, and but again, like all of his other stuff is all erased. So, uh, let me pause here for a second. So bulk of this dialogue here is I'm trying to figure out a way to just kind of cut a lot of it is that eventually like Jack is realizing here that it's well, hey, like they they want to go on and they want to make Mick Ryan vanish here. They want to make you disappear and then I'm next. Like they want to go on and try to figure out a way to make me disappear and make me probably disappear permanently. And Sally's like, no, 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 no. Like I don't think that's what's really going on. So eventually, like Jack ends up turning to Sally. It's like, well, hey, like who hired you to take these photos? And so it's like, oh, it's like, or no, wait, like who? No, wait. Jack ends up asking who hired Carp uh, because also Jack brings up that Sally was in those photos, and like he had kind of seen her kind of scantily clad and this and that, and so Jack ends up asking Sally who hired Carp to do the photos, and Sally doesn't know. Like, if anything, she's just from a small town, and like she's gone on and prior to this just done like 27 different uh 20 different lipsticks, uh and this and that, like I don't know whatever that meant. So uh so do, 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 do. uh but also like uh Sally didn't feel that bad by going on and doing what she did because she figured like, well, hey, like for all the guys who were to go on and fall for her going on and being in these intimate photos and then either blackmailing or going on and having these be sold to the news or the tabloids or whatever. Like she didn't feel that bad about it because it's kind of like if someone were to have been caught putting someone's hand in the cookie jar, then uh, it's like, well, hey, you can't cheat on an honest man. So, like that, of course, means like if this guy were to have been a person that didn't go through with it, then like Sally wouldn't have gone on and been able to just kind of manipulate this guy the way uh, sometimes other times women could. That seems wrong. Let me. Um, because that seemed really wrong. I'm sorry. I meant uh how some people can get manipulated into uh doing the wrong thing. Not but I guess whatever. Anyways, I'm really having a really hard time saying any of what's going on here. So let's fast track this as much as possible because the more I'm saying anything what's going on here, I'm getting my foot in my mouth. So, uh eventually this is all to be really just be asked by Jack. It's like, well, hey, like how much did Jack make out of all this? Like, shouldn't you have like really gone on um and asked like how much he got paid for this? Because Sally's probably thinking like, well, yeah, I probably got underpaid for this, I'm sure. So, because also Jack is going on to be like, well, yeah, like uh because really like everywhere they turn, like they're just getting effed by somebody. They don't want to know about this conspiracy, and they want to just shove it under the rug as much as possible. Everybody's going on and possibly getting what they want out of this besides the two of them, and he's also frustrated. It's like, you know what I heard, I know what I heard, and I know what I saw, and I'll make sure that this fucking country hears and sees it all and knows about it too. And you're gonna help me, Sally. You find that pal Carp and give me the original film. This is all about the original film at this point. So uh, we then turn around and let's go and bleh. Sally makes her way to Carp, and the further and further they talk here, and this all leads to eventually having Carp state that he was supposed to make $6,000 out of this, three ahead of time, three afterwards, but he only made three, and Sally's like, "Oh, you were supposed to make $6,000," and Carp is like, "Well, yeah." And so, but Sally really didn't get a good at all cut out of all that. So supposedly the guy that Carp talked to, this nut, like, called him a couple of weeks ago, and he said he's working for some candidate, uh, that was to try and get rid of McRyan out of the race, and it just sounded like a normal job to him. He says he had heard about our fine divorce work and offered me $6,000. Six. You told me three. So that's what Sally says. Like, you told me three. And he's like, well, three before and three after. So when are you gonna tell me about the three after? After I collected it. When do you think? Uh, so we also have Carpa's like, well, yeah, like, I didn't know if the guy was gonna come through at all. So, but supposedly the whole plan was like McRyan was never supposed to die. Uh, he wasn't even supposed to get hurt. It was just some accident, and the whole nuts idea was to shoot out the tire of McRyan's car and cause a little crack up. The police come, pull him out of the car with Sally, and and it would and it would all be filmed. Like, that was the whole plan. So yeah, uh, he wasn't supposed to die. Again, that was all an accident. So Sally looks at Manny. It's like, well, yeah, we got him killed, and 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 Carpet's like, no, we didn't do anything. Um, I was in the woods. I was in the. You were in the car. I didn't shoot out no tire. Neither did you. So so please just give me none of that nonsense shit. So, but if anything, nobody's crying about how this all turned out. Really, everybody's again trying to keep hush hush and very quiet. So, because if this guy would have lived, his career would have been finished anyways, and that would have all been led to the two of them. This way, the guy comes out ahead. He becomes a hero just because he had died, and he's a saint, martyr, Christ. They passed one of the bills this morning that was to be involving him. So eventually, the more and more that they start to talk here, uh, it leads them to eventually uh, have Carp say, it's like, well, hey, like, uh, look, well, hey, like, we made money out of all this. We're gonna make a fortune. We're gonna make a ton of money out of all this. So, uh, like, we're the biggest thing since the Zepper film, or the Zepp Rooter film, and this is history. They're gonna make films about it. They're gonna make this about it. They're gonna so it's in every magazine. So, like, it's on the 6 o'clock news. So he's just stating how from all this they're just kind of set for life, and so Sally's like, well, yeah, we're just a couple of vultures, and eventually, the further and further she starts about pigs and vultures, eventually it's like, well, hey, did you swallow the whole animal crackers? Like, so eventually Sally goes for a drink, And the more and more they start to kiss, and he drops her onto the bed. Sally wants nothing to do with Carp, and the more and more that he just grabs her and thrusts her into the bed, she breaks a bottle over his head and then runs off with the original film. Jack then goes on to watch the original film with his son. It's like, yes, fantastic, great. So now they're wanting to turn around and give this to Donahue, because that's all they can really do at this point, is just kind of give this to this news guy. So because they're gonna try and get it on the air. So uh, Jack tries to call Donahue, all while Susie is busy trying to make some food, cornflakes or something. So Jack turns to then Donahue here, and so Jack's like, "Well, hey, I've changed my mind. I want you to hear the tape, and I've also got Carp's film. If you run them together, it's clear it wasn't an accident. And I've also got uh, and so Donahue goes on and is like, okay, great, Jack. Like, great that you have this now. I'll go on and I'll talk to you in 20 minutes. So we have Burke that is now on the phone and is needing to call the police and mention about the murderers, and he's trying to go on and not sound like him, and 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 trying to get these people off of his scent. So he starts talking on the phone about how she wanted me to do it. She asked for it. She begged me for it. I didn't want to do it. She made me do it. Blah blah blah. You asked her. She'll tell you. Okay, where is she, sir? I don't know. Somewhere in that big hole near the reading market, where they're building something. Uh, but don't listen to her. She made me do it. Okay, just tell me where you are, sir. So, uh, back to Donahue and Jack. They're on this phone call. So Donahue's like, "Listen, Jack, you realize you don't, or no, wait, you won't mean a thing unless you, or whatever you have won't mean a thing unless you bring it to the air." And you say it's what you saw and what you heard, and so Jack is like, well, yeah, like I'll say it's what I heard, and it's like, and so Donahue's okay, great, and so Donahue's like, okay, what about the girl? Like, can we get her involved? And Jack is like, no, uh, don't involve her. And Donahue's like, okay. But then he's just like, well, why not? Like, she's not exactly proud. And then so Jack's like, well, she's not exactly proud of what she did. And Donahue's like, okay, no problem, Jack. But could I at least talk to her and kind of convince her otherwise? And so Jack's like, well, that's up to her. And so Donahue's like, okay, like I'll take care of that. So we come to find out that Burke is going on and tampering or bugging uh, Jack's phone and kind of listening in on all of this. So we then have Jack that is turning around and he calls Sally and he's like, well, hey, I just spoke to Donahue. And like, who's he? He's the TV newsman. Um, and so he's like, okay, I don't really watch the news. So Burke is overhearing all of this, and he has an earpiece in. So uh, and so Jack then explains to Sally here, it's like, well, hey, he's gonna put the video on the air. Um, he'll call you later and set up a meeting. And so Sally's like, okay, great. So uh, we turn around and then we have Jack, who is watching TV, and so they're talking about the city hall this morning. Chief inspectors, they have held a news conference, and they're talking about the Governor McRyan's death, and they're talking about how it's a freak accident. Uh, and they're also talking about the bizarre sex killings of Mary Roberts, a 22-year-old receptionist from the Center City area. So her body was found at 10 a.m. I'm going to fast track through all of this. Uh, and was also via anonymous caller to have been found, which ends up being to have actually been Burke. So Burke ends up adjusting the phone lines to where when Donahue tries to call Jack, he doesn't get an answer. And so Jack is looking at his phone, hoping that at some point he's going to get a call from somebody, but he won't. And so he continues to watch the news. So Sally ends up getting a call, and it ends up being for who she thinks is Donahue, but it's actually Burke. So it's like, oh, hey, yeah, like this is Sally. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm Frank Donahue here. Um, hey, were you supposed to, it's like, Sally ends up asking, well, hey, weren't you supposed to call Jack? And, and so Burke is like, well, isn't the damnedest thing? I can't get Jack on the phone to arrange a meeting. And so he thought he would go on and call her instead. So eventually they go on and they make this meeting together. And so Sally goes on and meets up with Jack. And so Jack ends up like meeting with Sally, and so Sally's like, well, hey, is there something wrong with your phone? And supposedly it's kept on a busy signal, and Jack is like, no, there's nothing wrong with my phone. He ends up handing it to Sally. It's like, no, there's nothing wrong with it. So so Sally ends up going on and talking about how she talked with a guy who was to be Donahue, and how they kind of put this meeting together. And Jack is like, well, how did he get your phone number? And he's like, I didn't give it to him. And Sally's like, well, hey, he's a reporter. Like, maybe he just has his ways. And so, hey, we'll just kind of give him the tape and the film. And so Jack goes on and is to come to the realization. It's like, well, hey, like, how about we go on and you give him the film, but I'm going to go on and I'm going to wire you the whole time. Because Sally told Jack about this meeting, and Jack is like, you know what, like, I feel like I'm going to go on and get kind of screwed out of this all over again. So this time around, we're going to have to wire you. And so we because they're trying to cover themselves. They're trying to make even a copy of this tape, and so they're really trying to figure out ways to like get this all kind of perfectly aligned. So we then go into Burke. Burke is now at this subway station, and he's reading this newspaper that's talking about the Liberty Bell Strangler strikes, and he then goes on and turns off to the side to see a sailor who is trying to get a hooker to kind of blow him for a certain amount of money. First it becomes $40, or first it becomes like $60, and it's $40, and it's $30, and it's $20, and it's $10. Eventually, it ends up getting $10. So the whole time that the two of these people are talking, we have Burke who is taking his watch and is taking the string out of his watch. And then we hear that sound had been reminiscent from the taping from before. So we have the sailor and we have the hooker that make their way to this phone booth, and Burke follows them and is to go into another phone booth where he's pretending to make a phone call. So the guy ends up getting freaking blown here, and he hands her $10. And the girl's like, well, hey, like I said, 30 for 30 minutes. And she's like, well, like, here you go. And so it's like, yeah, you're not much of a sailor, are you? So the sailor leaves. The hooker then goes on and sees that Burke is in one of the phone booths, and he kind of smacks one of these, uh, this $10 or whatever. It's like, well, hey, like, you want the money? And so the girl's like, all right, but I'm gonna go into the bathroom and I'm just gonna clean myself up and then I'll come back. So Burke just follows her into the woman's bathroom, and all while she's going on and brushing her teeth and cleaning herself up, we have Burke who is going into the other stall and having like himself just kind of overlap onto the other stall to then take this wire and then choke this girl and kill her. So both Jack and both Sally are now in their car, and so Jack is telling Sally to count to 10, and like, well, hey, if you get into any real trouble, like, I'll hear you the whole time. And so uh and so like, oh, hey, if you need me, I'll be right here. So Sally makes her way into the station, and Sally ends up telling Jack, it's like, well, hey, can you hear me, Jack? So she's like, well, hey, maybe at some point we can go on and we'll go and we'll see a show like the Sugar Babies, or maybe we'll go to Times Square. So Sally then finally bumps into Burke, who is to state that he is still Frank Donahue. It's like, oh, nice to meet you. The more and more that Donahue starts to talk here, Jack immediately realizes that this is not Donahue, that this is to actually be some other guy. So he's like, aha, I need to go on and I need to protect Sally from whoever this is. We also have Burke state here that they're supposedly being followed, so they need to just start to just walk off here. So now that Jack is hearing that, he's running to get into the station to figure out where exactly Sally is. But Sally isn't talking enough about where she actually is within the station. And even at one point, when she's to actually talk about where they actually are, there is to be a subway that just kind of rolls by, or there's to be this kind of spring of water that is to happen in this subway station. So he can't exactly hear what she's saying. But then also, like, Sally is to go on and mention about this really interesting story about a guy with a meat cleaver, and that goes on and chops somebody in the head. And I thought that was actually a funny bit of dialogue here. So as further Sally and Burke are to try and walk here, Burke almost gets pretty close to then taking the wire and killing Sally here. But then here's where the guy comes in with this just hose and just sprays down this subway station. So Jack is desperate to hope that Sally at some point is going to tell him where she is. As Sally's just gone on and talked about like the graffiti or the things that she's kind of seeing around her, but not really definitely saying where she is. But then she says Franklin Bridge Express, and so he's like, all right. So Jack rushes to try to get to Sally, all while hearing that they're also going to go on and they're going to see the fireworks and that there's a nice bar down here. And so Jack is like, okay, like, and then also Burke is like, well, yeah, like, you can also, like, give us a woman's angle on this whole story. And so by the time that Jack gets close enough to Sally and Burke is to be when they get on this subway, and Jack is consistently screaming, Sally, Sally, but she's too far away because she's already going off on the subway while he's running to try and get to that subway. So now Jack gets in his car and is driving wildly. It even gets to the point where he's driving into these buildings. He's going on and driving into the middle of this parade, crashing and flying into a bunch of people that are to be this marching band. He smashes into this window that has this display, and he ends up getting so injured via this accident that he ends up getting hauled away by this ambulance. So by the time that Jack comes to is much later, and so Burke is going on and asking Sally, it's like, well, hey, like what kind of film gauge is this? And he's like, well, is it 16 millimeter? Like, let me see what it is. And so Sally's like, okay, yeah, like that makes sense. Just kind of give him this film. And so Jack is now in this ambulance, and he realizes like, oh my god, like so he gets up in the ambulance and he starts running to figure out where possibly Sally is. So we have Burke that goes on and is to grab the film, and he's like, well, yeah, like, this definitely is 16. And he takes it and he chucks it and he dunks it into the water. And so Sally's like, oh, like, uh, Jack's gonna kill you for that. And then Burke throws kind of Sally over his shoulder, or then kind of chokes her, and is forcing her to get to where these fireworks are so he can kill her. Weirdly enough, he's going on and throughout this whole thing is like telling her, it's like, well, hey, if you make a sound, I'll kill you. But she's gonna die anyways. She's gonna get killed anyways, sadly enough. So Jack is racing to figure out where this girl is. I guess with the sound, he can figure out where, weirdly enough, she closest is. And also, Sally is consistently trying to talk to Jack, thinking that he, or that she, could be heard by him. So, but really, all that she's saying is, "Jack, please help me, Jack, please." And like, like you should go on and tell him exactly where you are. But again, she doesn't realize that. So, by the time that Jack really sees where she is, we have Sally that's like reaching out and she's like, God, Jack, Jack. And then we see her disappear and grabbed by Burke. So Jack, fortunately now seeing where she is, now runs to get to Burke. And by the time it's too late, Burke had already gone on and killed Sally. And now Jack is coming in to now stab into Burke here and now kill him. So Jack moves Burke's body to realize that Sally is unfortunately dead. Jack now goes on and is to hold Sally in his arms as all the fireworks are going off. Jack is consistently torturing himself by hearing this tape over and over and over again. The amount of many different seasons have changed. Snow is now on the ground. This is telling us that a lot of time has passed, that he's consistently still watching or listening to this whole tape to see what he could have done, or to really miss what he just did not go on um, and be conscious of, possibly. But so they go on and they talk about the Liberty Bell Strangler and how, of course, the Strangler was never really identified. And so, but again, Jack is still over and over again listening the cries of Sally on this tape. So we then go on to have Sam and both Jack here that are watching this horror movie again, and the scream of the woman is to have been replaced from Sally's tape. And when the girl actually screams on the movie, it actually sounds really good. And it's like, well, yeah, that's a good scream. And Jack is like, well, yeah, that is a good scream. But like, he's really just tortured by this to the point of him overhearing the scream over and over again in his brain, that he is probably driven crazy by the end of this film, to the point of us having to really need to stop the film here, because really we're probably going to realize that, like Jack said, it's either that people are going to end up crazy or end up dead, and Jack is probably going to end up be going crazy over what had happened. So with that said, I'm going to get the heck out of here. Let me know in the comments below what you felt about this film. I had really a lot of problems getting through a lot of dialogue in this movie. Like I kind of felt that I was going to have problems with, because I was trying to figure out a way to just shorten it up, but there was no way to do that, because it was just to make for a longer and longer piece. So like my real problem was just trying to figure out how to just shorten this up, but I had no way of doing that. So with that said, I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.